I was browsing Steam without looking for anything specific when I stumbled upon a game called Realm Tycoons. At first, I must admit it seemed like just another one of those fantasy strategy games that go unnoticed among so many releases, but I decided to download the demo to give it a shot. And that was when the game started to surprise me. As I explored the map, conquered cities, managed resources, recruited troops, and developed my hero, I began to notice a very strong familiarity with Heroes of Might and Magic. Not in the sense of being a direct copy, but in that classic structure of exploring, leveling up, and building a kingdom where every single decision can shift the course of the match. The demo is still far from a flawless experience, and the full game has a lot to prove, but the potential is there. Realm Tycoons blends turn-based exploration, factions, spells, economy, strongholds, and tactical battles in a way that genuinely sparked my curiosity. So I decided to put together this video to share my thoughts on the game and explain why it reminded me so much of Might and Magic. Could Realm Tycoons be a viable alternative for those who miss this style of fantasy strategy? That is what we are going to find out together. The moment you open the map in Realm Tycoons, the initial sensation is pure déjà vu. A board divided into sectors with cities, mines, capitals, and strongholds scattered across the territory, just like the hexagonal or modular maps we used to memorize from playing so much Heroes of Might and Magic. It is not an open-world space. It is a structured layout, almost like an actual board game, where every territory serves a clear purpose. One yields resources, another provides defense, and another acts as a strategic turning point. Here is what I want you to pay attention to. Exploration is strictly turn-based, meaning every move you make on the map carries a real cost. You cannot just rush around grabbing everything. You must choose whether to capture the mine securing your gold income, reinforce the stronghold closest to the enemy border, or risk pushing toward the opponent's capital. This every turn is a scarce resource mechanic is the core backbone that made Heroes of Might and Magic work so well, and Realm Tycoons replicates it almost to the letter. Yet the resemblance goes beyond the visual board layout. The adventure's structure is where things get interesting. You recruit armies as you advance, unlock access to spells as you conquer territories, and your power progression is tied directly to geographical control. It is not an isolated leveling system. The map itself dictates your growth. This is a very specific design choice that only those who played classic Might and Magic titles will immediately recognize. There is also an essential detail worth mentioning. Magical sites are scattered across the board, functioning as points of interest separate from cities and mines, places that reward thorough exploration rather than pure military conquest. This adds an extra layer of decision-making. Do you pursue direct military strength, or do you invest time exploring what the map conceals? It is precisely this kind of dilemma that separated a merely efficient player from a truly strategic one in the classics, and Realm Tycoons seems to grasp that concept well. In Realm Tycoons, every city you capture carries tangible weight within the match. It avoids the common trope of taking a territory, receiving a generic passive bonus, and never thinking about it again. Here, holdings can generate revenue, station a garrison, and grow defensively, making every conquest an active part of your kingdom's framework. This shifts how you view the map entirely. A city is not just a node to increase your territory percentage. It can fund your next expansion, secure a vulnerable flank, or serve as a forward staging ground against a rival. Even a single mine or stronghold, depending on positioning, can end up being more valuable than a larger territory simply because it holds a choke point or anchors your economy. I appreciate this sense of gradual progression. You start with limited holdings, claim a property here and another there, upgrade your defenses, and gradually realize that scattered network of points has formed an actual kingdom. It feels like an organic progression because the territory does not just expand visually. It produces resources, gains protection, and directly informs your subsequent choices. This creates engaging dilemmas during your turns. You can keep expanding aggressively to boost your income, but it might be wiser to pause and fortify a critical settlement before an enemy counterattacks. Realm Tycoons brings back the classic philosophy that conquering a city is only the starting point. Managing it, upgrading it, and making it sustain your realm is where the real challenge lies. The hero system could end up being the main defining feature of Realm Tycoons, because heroes do not function merely as generic pieces moved across the board to capture cities. A hero has dedicated progression, gaining experience, developing attributes, learning spells, finding artifacts, and accumulating prestige. This builds an immediate connection to the character, making you feel as though you are building a central figure in your realm rather than directing an interchangeable unit. This development significantly alters how you approach the game. A combat-oriented hero can lead your vanguard and force direct engagements, while another might be built to scout the map, claim neutral holdings, or maximize resource efficiency. The experience earned does more than inflate base stats. It defines the character's operational role and guides your strategic choices throughout the campaign. Spells and artifacts reinforce this customization. Depending on what you unlock and equip, the same hero archetype can perform entirely different roles. You can configure them as an aggressive frontline commander, a dedicated spellcaster, or a tactical utility unit focused on map control and army enablement. This is where Realm Tycoons moves past simple board control and begins generating emergent narratives per match. Prestige acts as a complementary mechanic that adds weight to this progression. As a hero gains experience and standing, they become a structural pillar of your faction. In my view, this type of system creates memorable campaigns long after they conclude. A hero who started weak, secured a pivotal artifact, learned a decisive spell, and completely turned the tide of the match. Factions in this game are not just cosmetic reskins for unit models. Each possesses a distinct mechanical identity, featuring unique rosters, heroes, spell pools, strategic perks, and territorial control methods. The demo showcases three options: the High Court, disciplined and focused on frontline durability; the Ethereum, oriented around spellcasting, speed, and unit coordination; and the Wild Bloom, built on mobility and board control. This significantly shifts match dynamics depending on your selection. Playing High Court favors sturdy frontline pushes and direct engagements. With Ethereum, the strategy centers on leveraging utility spells and positioning to compensate for lower raw durability. Wild Bloom caters to aggressive playstyles, using superior movement speed to claim key objectives early and disrupt enemy formations. The magic trees reinforce these distinct identities. You do not simply select a faction and receive a static army. You unlock progression nodes that steer your entire game plan. In one match, you might invest in buffs to reinforce unit stats. In another, you might focus on zone control, restricting enemy movement, or setting up ambush vectors. The faction serves as a mechanical foundation rather than a rigid, predetermined path. This mirrors the variety found across the classic factions in Heroes of Might and Magic. When finishing a match immediately makes you consider testing another faction, hero build, unit composition, and magic school, the game's replay value increases significantly. That balance between defined faction identity and strategic flexibility is what keeps individual campaigns feeling mechanically distinct rather than repetitive iterations on the same map. The economy in Realm Tycoons might look simple on the surface. Capture properties, collect income, and reinvest that gold to expand. However, in practice, expanding blindly without a plan quickly leads to issues. Every property generates revenue, builds its own defensive garrison, and can serve as a strategic anchor for your kingdom. Gold ceases to be just a passive counter on the interface. You must actively calculate whether to spend immediately on troop recruitment, invest in fortifying an exposed border town, or bank capital for a high-tier structural upgrade. A reinforced garrison can repel an incoming invasion, but allocating those funds might delay taking a critical mine or pushing toward the opposing capital. It comes down to knowing when to expand and when to consolidate defenses. Overextending without securing captured territory leaves your kingdom wide, fragile, and exposed. Conversely, turtling and overinvesting in local defense cedes map control and tempo to the opponent. The game establishes a constant friction between risk management and territorial consolidation, which is fundamental to solid turn-based strategy. Blending military logistics with economic management is one of Realm Tycoon's strongest aspects. You are not just directing units in combat, you are managing an operational economy, deciding which holdings warrant infrastructure investment, and turning conquests into functional assets for your empire. It makes a well-executed expansion strategy considerably more rewarding than simply brute-forcing a combat victory. Battles do not exist merely to interrupt map exploration. Even when utilizing the auto-resolve feature, army composition remains critical because unit roles vary and combat outcomes depend on far more than raw numerical superiority. Combat preparation starts well before pressing the attack command. You need to analyze available units, identify frontline sponges, assess ranged damage dealers, and deploy utility units effectively. A larger standing army will not guarantee victory if its composition lacks synergy or counters for the specific encounter. Hero integration and spell support are equally vital factors. A leveled hero equipped with optimized artifacts and the right spell loadout can decisively flip an otherwise balanced engagement. The tactical calculation shifts from, "I have more units, so I win," to evaluating whether the army composition is sound, the commander is optimized, and the right strategic resources are deployed. This confirms Realm Tycoons prioritizes strategic planning over real-time mechanical execution or micromanaging individual units. The core focus lies in planning ahead, choosing favorable engagements, deploying the correct unit mixes, and absorbing the strategic consequences of each battle. When an auto-resolved combat system still feels consequential, it proves the preparatory decisions carry genuine mechanical weight, and that is what keeps each encounter engaging. The map serves as more than just travel routes connecting settlements. Navigating the board reveals wandering merchants, arenas, loot caches, magical sites, hostile encounters, and roaming rival heroes. Consequently, even turns that do not involve capturing a settlement present meaningful points of interaction. This turns standard movement into calculated decision-making. You might be en route to secure a mine, only to encounter a merchant and face the trade-off of diverting gold away from military recruitment. Alternatively, encountering an arena or treasure cache presents an opportunity cost, as diverting movement might sacrifice tempo and leave a nearby settlement vulnerable. It is not just about plotting the shortest route. It is about weighing risk versus reward for every detour. These random events noticeably alter match pacing. A magical site might provide an unexpected utility buff, while an aggressive rival hero can force an early engagement ahead of schedule. Even a heavily defended neutral sector can present an obstacle if it blocks your main supply route to a key objective. The map feels dynamic despite its structured, board-like grid. This design captures the exploration loop reminiscent of classic strategy titles. You begin with an operational plan, adapt to discoveries along the way, and frequently end up executing an entirely different strategy than originally intended. Combining methodical scouting, dynamic events, and turn-by-turn adjustments ensures each match develops its own distinct trajectory. The specific element that reminded me most of Might and Magic in Realm Tycoons was not an individual unit type or a similar spell. It was the cohesion of its core loop. You scout the map, exploit dynamic opportunities, conquer properties, level up your hero, upgrade your army, and manage kingdom logistics within a unified cycle. The game integrates these mechanics into a cohesive turn-based strategy framework driven by exploration, resource management, military recruitment, and magic systems. Realm Tycoons is not simply trying to clone Might and Magic. It does not need to replicate the exact visual style, naming conventions, or specific legacy systems of the franchise to evoke that design philosophy. What it captures is a design approach that is less common in contemporary releases. The principle that every movement on the map should reveal information, force a tactical decision, or open a new strategic avenue for the campaign. In many modern strategy games, exploration, combat, character progression, and empire management often operate in isolated silos. You explore in one layer, manage city infrastructure in another menu, and transition to combat separately. Here, the systems are tightly interconnected. Capturing territory alters income, revenue directly finances military upkeep, heroes develop through map encounters, and those variables dictate your next logistical move. That systemic continuity gives the game its identity. You are not simply checking off sequential objectives. You are executing a long-term strategic plan where every logistical choice impacts faction growth. Integrating exploration, conquest, hero progression, and resource management into a single loop successfully channels the classic appeal that defined Might and Magic for strategy players. Can Realm Tycoons genuinely serve as the spiritual successor that many heroes of Might and Magic fans have been waiting for? It is too early to state that definitively, primarily because the complete game has not yet been released. The demo establishes a solid mechanical baseline featuring factions, heroes, magic systems, artifacts, domain management, tactical encounters, and dynamic map events, but the final release will determine how well these systems hold up together over extended play. There is always the standard risk of full releases failing to meet early expectations. Implementing functional systems in an 8-week slice is one thing. Sustaining balanced, long-form campaigns with adequate variety and meaningful late-game decisions is a different engineering challenge. While the feature set is broad, long-term viability will depend on mechanical balance, rival AI performance, and whether procedural variation keeps repeated campaigns strategically engaging. That said, the structural potential is evident. Realm Tycoons recognizes that the appeal of the hero's formula was not just fantasy tropes or turn-based combat, but the interconnected loop of exploration, conquest, hero progression, territorial logistics, and tactical planning. The full release is set to expand the scope with additional factions, heroes, campaign options, and the Last Realm standing mode. Taking an objective view, I would not label Realm Tycoons the definitive successor just yet. However, if the full build delivers on its technical design and unifies these systems into a balanced, cohesive package, it could be one of the closest titles to address the void left by Heroes of Might and Magic. For players interested in turn-based fantasy strategy, it is definitely a title worth monitoring.